My wife set a third place at our dinner table on the first Monday of every month. Nobody ever came. One extra plate, one glass, one fork and knife. She always arranged them before I entered the kitchen. And after we ate, she quietly cleared all three settings. For years, I treated it as one of Valerie's private rituals. Then last March, she made chicken paprikash with butter noodles. I stopped in the kitchen doorway. I knew one man who would love that meal enough to ask Valerie for it every birthday. Gordon Pike. 25 years earlier, Gordon had worked with Valerie at the high school district office in Spokane, Washington. He was divorced, funny, lonely, and closer to my wife than I ever admitted I was comfortable with. Then one summer, he disappeared from our lives. I looked at the empty place. Why this tonight? Valerie's serving spoon paused. What do you mean? Paprikash. You like it? Gordon liked it. She set the spoon down. For 1 second, neither of us moved. My name is Martin Sloan. I was 67, retired from managing fleet maintenance for a regional delivery company. Valerie and I had been married 43 years. I had seen that third setting for almost 11 of them. I had never once connected it to Gordon. Valerie carried the casserole to the table. Sit down before it gets cold. Is that place for him? She looked at the empty chair, then at me. No. The answer came quickly. Too quickly. We ate without speaking. She served food onto the third plate exactly as she served ours. A smaller portion, but real food. After dinner, she scraped none of it away. She transferred it into a glass container, sealed the lid, and put it in the refrigerator. The next morning, she took it to work for lunch. So she was not expecting anyone. That should have helped. It didn't. Because before she went to bed, Valerie stood alone beside the empty chair and touched the top of it with 2 fingers. Not like furniture, like memory. The following month, I paid attention. First Monday, Valerie made beef stew with white egg noodles. Again, she set 3 places. Again, nobody came. I remembered Gordon ordering that exact meal at our house once, laughing because Valerie put carrots in it, and he claimed carrots were an insult to beef. I had not thought about that dinner in decades. Now small memories began returning. Gordon calling our house after 8. Gordon leaning against our kitchen counter while Valerie laughed. Gordon bringing her coffee at school when she worked late during enrollment week. Nothing improper. Nothing I could have accused him of without sounding like the jealous man I was trying not to be. But I had been jealous. Valerie knew it. That night, I asked, "How long have you been doing the extra place?" She rinsed a dish. "A while." "How long?" She turned off the faucet. "You've seen it." That's not what I asked. She dried her hands. 11 years. The exactness bothered me. Why 11? She folded the towel once. "Martin, does Gordon know?" Her eyes moved to mine. "Know what?" "That you still set a place for him." She stared at me long enough that I heard how the question sounded. Then she said, "You're asking the wrong question." "What's the right one?" She opened the refrigerator and put away the leftovers. I waited. She closed the door. "The right question is why you suddenly care about something you watched me do for 11 years. I did not have a good answer. Retirement had made me notice more. That was part of it. But the truth was uglier. The meal had given the empty chair a man's face. For the next few weeks, I started noticing what happened before the first Monday. Valerie bought fresh paprika from the little European market across town. She polished the third glass, even when the other 2 came straight from the dishwasher. She never placed a napkin there. That seemed strange until I remembered Gordon never used one properly. He tucked it into his shirt like a bib and made Valerie laugh. One night, I said his name casually while we watched television. "Whatever happened to Gordon?" Valerie's hand stopped halfway into the bowl of popcorn. "I don't know." "You haven't heard from him?" "No." "Not once." She looked at the television. "Not in a long time." That was different from no. I began testing my own memory instead of Valerie. Gordon Pike had been part of our lives for maybe 6 years. He and Valerie worked in the same district building. I met him at a staff barbecue. His daughter, Rachel, was 19 then and studying nursing in Seattle. Gordon talked about her constantly. He and Rachel had a complicated relationship after the divorce. She loved him, but she blamed him for leaving her mother. He blamed himself enough to become defensive whenever she brought it up. Valerie sometimes found herself in the middle. I hated that. Not because I thought she was sleeping with Gordon, because he seemed to need parts of my wife I had stopped asking for. Patience, attention, time. During that period, Valerie and I were not doing well. My company had merged with a larger distributor. I was working 60-hour weeks, terrified that younger managers were being lined up to replace me. Our son had moved to Arizona and barely called. Valerie had begun talking about taking a separate vacation because, as she put it, waiting for your schedule is not the same as having a marriage. Gordon listened to her. I knew he did because once, during an argument, I said, "Maybe Gordon can take you." Valerie walked out of the room. We did not discuss him again for weeks. Then one September, she told me Gordon had accepted a job in Portland. He left Spokane quickly. No goodbye dinner. No last beer. Nothing. I was relieved. I never asked why the friendship ended so abruptly. Now I wonder whether it had ended at all. The third place ritual began much later, which made no sense if it was simply nostalgia. One Saturday, Valerie and I were grocery shopping when she picked up a jar of Hungarian paprika. I said, "First Monday?" Her hand tightened around the jar. "Yes." "Why Gordon's food?" She put into the cart. "It isn't Gordon's food. You know what I mean." She pushed the cart forward. I followed. Finally, she stopped near the frozen vegetables. "If I had loved Gordon the way you think I did, do you really believe I would announce it with dinner every month?" "I don't know what I believe. That's the problem." She walked away. I stood beside a freezer case full of peas, realizing the old jealousy was no longer the mystery. Her anger was. On the first Monday in May, Valerie set the third place before I could ask anything. This time she made pork chops and apples, not one of Gordon's favorites. That gave me enough nerve to sit down. Who was the chair for? Valerie kept arranging the vegetables. "I told you, not Gordon." "Then who?" She sat across from me. For a moment, the table looked like a conversation stage for someone missing. Valerie rubbed her thumb against the edge of her plate. "Do you remember Rachel Pike?" "Gordon's daughter." "Yes." "Is it for her?" "No." "Then help me." She looked at the third plate. This was supposed to be Gordon's seat. My stomach tightened. That sounds like it's for Gordon. "It isn't." She took a breath. 24 years ago, Gordon and Rachel were supposed to have dinner here. I remembered no such plan. Valerie did. Rachel had stopped speaking to Gordon after an argument about her mother. Nearly a year passed. Then Rachel called Valerie. She said she was willing to see her father once, somewhere neutral, with people she trusted nearby. Valerie offered our house. She spent days preparing Gordon for that dinner. No blaming. No defending the divorce. No speeches about how hard fatherhood had been. Just listen. Rachel chose a meal. Chicken paprikash. Because Gordon loved it? I asked because she remembered him making it when she was little. The third place belonged to Gordon because it was the chair he was supposed to sit in that night. But he never arrived. Rachel waited 40 minutes. Then she left. She thought he backed out? I asked, "Yes." "And Gordon?" Valerie looked at me carefully. He thought Rachel changed her mind. My relief about the affair lasted maybe 5 seconds. Then I understood what I was hearing. Valerie had spent 11 years setting a place for a failed reconciliation I had never known existed. Why 11 years? Her eyes lowered. Because that's when I learned why Gordon never came. I asked what happened. She shook her head. "Not tonight." I almost pushed. Then I looked at the empty chair. For once, I didn't. The next day, I remembered the dinner, not the purpose. Just pieces. Valerie cooking. A pie cooling on the counter. Her checking the clock. Me coming home early with a headache. We had argued before dinner. I could not remember why. That evening, I asked her, "Was that the night I came home from the coma?" She nodded. I had spent 3 days at a distribution conference, while rumors circulated that my department would be cut. I returned convinced I was about to lose my job. Valerie barely had time to say hello before telling me we had company coming. I asked who. She said Gordon. I remember the heat rising in me. Of all people, Gordon. In my house. On a night when I wanted my wife to pay attention to me. "What did you tell me about Rachel?" I didn't. Why not? Because it wasn't my story to spread. Rachel asked me not to tell anyone until she actually came. So, I thought it was dinner with Gordon. Yes. That changed something. Not enough. I asked, where was Rachel? Finishing a shift at the hospital. She was coming at 7. And Gordon? 6:30. I remembered the doorbell. Valerie had gone upstairs to change her blouse after spilling sauce on it. I opened the door. Gordon stood there holding supermarket flowers and a bottle of ginger ale. He looked nervous. I assumed he was nervous because he knew I disliked how close he was to Valerie. He asked, "Is she ready?" I thought he meant my wife. I said, "She's upstairs." Then Gordon asked something I had forgotten. "Is Rachel here yet?" At the time, the name barely registered. I thought he was asking whether Valerie's co-worker Rachel had arrived. I said no. Gordon looked toward the dining room. Then he asked, "Still okay if I come in?" I remembered exactly what I said. "Honestly, Gordon, tonight's not good." His face changed. I had been exhausted, jealous, frightened about work, and tired of feeling like a guest in my own marriage. I added, "Valerie has enough going on. Maybe give her some space." Gordon nodded. Then he left. I never told Valerie. He had been at the door. I assumed he understood dinner was canceled. Valerie assumed he never came. Rachel arrived 30 minutes later and waited for a father who had already been turned away. "I didn't know," I said. Valerie stood at the counter. "I know. You never told me Rachel was coming." "No." So Gordon could have called. He could have. Or come back. He could have. I heard myself reaching for exits. Valerie heard it too. "Martin, I'm not saying you destroyed the relationship." I looked at her. "Then what are you saying?" "That you made one bad decision on a night when several people were already carrying too much." Rachel had expected disappointment. Gordon was ashamed enough to retreat when he thought he had been rejected. Valerie had kept the purpose of the dinner private because Rachel asked her to, and I had interpreted Gordon through jealousy before I understood why he was standing on my porch. My sentence changed that night. It did not create everything that followed. What happened afterward? Valerie called Gordon the next morning. His number had already been disconnected. The district office said he had left for Portland earlier than expected. Rachel refused to discuss him. When Valerie tried to say something must have gone wrong, Rachel answered, "He always has a reason." For 13 years, Valerie believed Gordon had simply lost his nerve. Then, 11 years ago, the school district held a retirement luncheon for a longtime payroll supervisor Valerie had worked with for decades. Former employees came from around the region. Gordon was one of them. He had worked under the same supervisor before leaving for Portland. Valerie saw him near the coffee urn after the speeches. Neither had expected the other to be there. They spoke in a corner of the cafeteria for less than 15 minutes. No reunion. No renewed friendship. Just one conversation that should have happened years earlier. Gordon mentioned the dinner. Valerie said, "You never came." He stared at her. "I was at your door." That was when he told her I had answered. I had said the night was not good. I had told him she needed space. "He thought I sent you," Valerie said. I closed my eyes. Gordon believed Valerie had changed her mind. Rachel believed her father had failed to show. Valerie believed Gordon had chosen not to come. One impatient sentence had allowed 3 different stories to survive. What did you tell him? The truth. Did he contact Rachel? Valerie shook her head. He said she had made it clear years before that she didn't want him reaching out. He was afraid an apology after 13 years would become another request for her to take care of his feelings. Then the luncheon ended. Gordon left. Valerie never saw him again. Why didn't you tell me after the luncheon? Valerie pulled out the chair across from me. At first, because I was angry. With me? Yes. She had come home carrying 13 years of the story rearranged in her head. My jealousy. Her secrecy. Gordon's retreat. Rachel's certainty that her father would fail her. I wanted to tell you that night, she said. Why didn't you? You were asleep in the recliner. That stopped you. No. She gave a tired little smile. I stood there and thought, if I wake him up, he'll spend the next 6 months trying to fix something that can't be fixed. I probably would have. I would have looked for Gordon, called Rachel, explained myself until someone forgave me or asked me to stop. Valerie knew that. I had also recently gone through heart surgery and was struggling with the idea of retirement. Part of her silence was protection. Part of it was not. I wanted you not to know, she said, for a while. Why? Because I had lived 13 years thinking Gordon failed Rachel. Then I learned you had been standing in the doorway. The sentence needed no emphasis. Valerie began setting the third place the next first Monday, not because she wanted Gordon back in her life, not because she believed one missed dinner explained an entire father-daughter relationship. She recreated the meal that never happened. At first it was anger, she said. At me? At everybody. Then guilt joined it. She had withheld important context from me that night. Gordon had retreated instead of asking questions. Rachel had closed the door on later explanations. I had acted through jealousy and stress. And after a few years, I asked. Valerie looked at the empty chair. Habit. That's all. No. She hesitated. After a few years, not telling you became its own secret. I didn't know how to confess 11 years without making 11 years the biggest thing. That was the second major truth. My mistake helped create the reason for the ritual. Her silence turned the ritual into another wound. Neither of us could hand the whole story to the other. For several weeks, we did not set a third place. Valerie stopped the ritual without announcing she had stopped. The first Monday in June, I came into the kitchen and saw 2 plates. I stood there longer than necessary. She noticed. Do you want the third one? I don't know. Neither do I. We ate with the chair empty. Not symbolically empty. Just a chair. It felt strange. A few nights later, I asked if she had ever loved Gordon. Really sighed. Not the way you mean. What way then? He was my friend. He listened to me during a time when you didn't listen much. That hurt because it was true before any of this came to light. I remembered those years. I came home carrying work into every room. Valerie learned to finish conversations without me. Gordon occupied some of that empty space. She admitted enjoying being important to him. She admitted that when I became jealous. Part of her liked that too. It proved you noticed, she said. That wasn't fair. No. Neither of us had clean hands. We did not go to counseling. We talked at the table. Sometimes for 10 minutes. Sometimes until midnight. I apologized for turning Gordon away. Valerie apologized for arranging a deeply important dinner in our home without telling me enough to understand what was happening. I apologized for the jealousy underneath my decision. She apologized for letting 11 years of resentment sit between us in plain sight. I asked whether she wanted to find Gordon. No. Rachel? No. That surprised me. Why not? Because their relationship belongs to them. What if my part matters? It does. Then shouldn't I explain? Valerie looked at me for a long moment. Maybe someday. But explanation is not always a gift. I understood the warning. My urge to confess contained guilt. It also contained a wish to be relieved of it. For once, I did not act immediately. July passed, then August. On the first Monday in September, Valerie took 3 pork chops from the refrigerator. She stared at them, then put one back. The first Monday in October arrived quietly. I almost forgot the date. Valerie did not. I came into the kitchen while she was setting the table. 2 plates, 2 glasses, 2 sets of silverware. Then she stopped. Her hand rested on the back of the third chair. I opened the cabinet. Valerie looked over. I took out another plate. Neither of us spoke for a moment. Then I asked, "Where do you want it?" She looked at the old place across from her, the place Gordon had been supposed to sit 24 years earlier. Then she looked at the end of the table, between us, put it there. I set the plate at the end. Not quite hers. Not quite mine. Valerie placed a fork beside it. I added a glass. Dinner was chicken paprikash. She had made it without mentioning why. We served ourselves. The third plate stayed empty at first. Halfway through dinner, Valerie reached for the casserole. She hesitated. Then she spooned a small portion onto the extra plate. "What's it here?" She looked at me. "You okay?" "Yes." That was not entirely true. It was true enough for dinner. We talked about our grandson's new job, the neighbor's broken sprinkler, whether we should repaint the guest room before Christmas. Ordinary things. When we finished, Valerie picked up my plate, then hers. She reached for the third one and paused. I stood, took the glass from beside it, and carried it to the sink. Valerie picked up the plate. She scraped the small serving of paprikash into the same container as the other leftovers. No separate container. No untouched portion saved for morning. She rinsed the plate and handed it to me. I put it in the dishwasher with ours. Valerie closed the casserole dish. I wiped the table. The chair at the end stayed where it was. Before bed, she turned off the kitchen light. All 3 plates were gone.